All right. So what we're looking to discuss today is the idea of our tissues capacity versus the stress we place on our tissues. Is a very important part of how I explain to my clients about their injuries, why they've come about, and what we need to do about them. I think it's a really important concept to get down. Not many people know about it, not many people have thought about it, but it really provides quite a clear pathway forward whenever we've got an injury. All right, so I'm going to show you a little graph about the difference between tissue capacity and tissue stress. So hopefully it kind of explains what I'm trying to get at and helps to uh, pinpoint why this concept matters. So if we've got a graph, and I'll be drawing on the whiteboard that you can't see just now, but give me a second. Cool, so if I'm looking at this graph right now, and you should be able to see that, what we're looking at is a graph with our tissues capacity at the top. And now our tissues capacity, just as simply, it means what our tissues can deal with at any given time. So we've got muscle tissue, we've got fascia and ligament tissue, we've got fat, skin, heart, like there's all different type of tissues within the body. Every tissue has a certain limitation of how much it can withstand. And so at any given time, the collection of all those tissues in an area have a certain capacity, which is largely defined by the weakest tissue. So of course, if you have a tissue, like let's just say some muscle tissue, and that fails, so we have a tear in that muscle tissue, that was the weakest part within that area at that time. So what we're looking at, tissue capacity right now and across time, it's going to fluctuate up and down. When you're fatigued, it's going to be down a bit further. And the next line that we're interested in is the stress placed on those tissues on any given day, week, month, year. So next line we're going to do, all right, so this second line just below, I've placed against it as well, is the stress or work line. So the amount of stress that we're putting into the system at any given time. So this could just simply be going about our day, walking around, could be running, could be getting into the gym. It could be all of a sudden where we've got this little peak that I'll circle. We've done a marathon, or we've tried to really up our training, and this is what I've just circled up there. What you'll note is that the stress at this particular point surpassed what our tissue could handle. So when that happens, that's essentially an injury. So at some point in time, your tissues were no longer able to deal with the cumulative stress placed on them. And that's what's really important, is for a lot of people, an injury just comes about when you're bending over and picking something up. So it sounds like, why have I gotten injured from this movement? I wasn't even doing anything. That's what I get from a lot of my clients. And it's really important to note that it is largely the straw that broke the camel's back. So more than likely, there has been a long-standing buildup of stress into a particular area. Those tissues were not capable of adapting, or I guess having enough of a buffer zone, so that at a given time, all things sort of led to this failure. And at the end of the day, our bodies aren't perfect. So failure happens all the time. There are errors in the system. Things just happen. You can't walk through life without things breaking down. Okay, so it is a natural part, but of course we want to try and avoid major injuries that upset our ability to do the things we want, to train and to live a healthy lifestyle. Generally, what we're looking to do when it comes to an injury is allow someone to understand this concept, because understanding this concept is really important. It takes away a lot of the, well, why did this happen? I don't understand. One, it helps to clarify that side of things. The second thing, it helps to clarify why it's so important to then look at a program for rehabilitation. Because when we've had an injury, so we've hit that little spike point, and all of a sudden, let's just say we've recovered from that injury, we no longer have any symptoms. Well, our tissue's capacity, this is a terrible drawing, apologies. Ugh, don't know if you better keep up with this. I've drawn a down arrow and a little dotted line. So our tissue's capacity after a period of healing may be actually a little bit lower, because we've had to rest, we've had to allow things to try and settle. So although we're no longer in pain, the overall tissue's capacity now may still be lower than what it originally was before the injury. So now if all of a sudden we're to do, again, something fairly normal in our given workday, we may surpass our tissue's capacity again, causing an injury. So what we're really wanting to do, and this is why rehab is so important, we're trying to increase our tissue's capacity upwards so that we have more of a buffer zone between the everyday stress that we place on those tissues and what they can handle. I think I get the award for the worst drawings ever. But so the buffer zone that we're looking to create a gap, as much of a gap as possible between what our tissues can handle and the everyday stress that we place on them. And now, of course, in order for us to train effectively, we're always training sort of just below our capacity, but sort of near the capacity, and that creates an adaptation to improve our tissue's capacity overall. The classic example, of course, you get a bicep, and unfortunately mine aren't exactly anything to be writing home about, but you get a bicep, you start doing some bicep curls. After a long enough period of time and of progressively loading heavier and heavier, I will adapt my muscle tissue. So let's say I'm doing a 1 kilo bicep curl. I'm doing lots of those. I'm going to get to a point where that 1 kilogram isn't going to challenge those tissues, not with at least at a significant number of repetitions. So what I'm going to want to do in order to continue to stress those tissues is up the weight. So progressively load, continue with the bicep curls, and go up to 5 kilos, 10 kilos, etc., etc. As we're doing that, we're increasing the tissue's capacity to manage that particular action. In this case, a bicep curl. This is why, in general, exercise is so good, because when we're providing full body workouts and utilizing all the different muscles and joints and fascia across the body, we're essentially training ourselves to manage the stress that we put in our bodies in everyday life. So we're significantly lowering the risk of injury. The caveat to this, of course, is in order to increase or improve our tissue's capacity, we are working at a point that can be dangerously close to, I guess, causing injury. So this is why you have people in the gym, or athletes, they will accrue an injury, and they'll accrue it largely because of their training is so high. Whereas an everyday non-athlete, they will accrue an issue largely because their training is so low. So their capacity is so low that an any day thing or any day sequence of things can cause them to tip over the injury profile. Or I'm saying too many big words. Doing your everyday things, you're more likely to get an injury than for someone who's training significantly hard. Their everyday things are less likely to injure them, but their training itself might be at such a high intensity that they're at risk of injury. That's just how it works. The Goldilocks zone is there, where we're trying to train just below the tissue capacity in order to raise it up. So a long story about that, but hopefully that hits home the concept, which I find to be really core to how I think about injury and what we want to be doing in order to avoid recurrence as well. Ultimately, you have to be aware that if you have something like a low back injury, that once you've recovered from that and you're not experiencing pain anymore, that's fantastic. But your buffer zone, what your tissues can handle right there, if they are not rehabilitated, if you are not training those tissues, are going to be at this lowered and constantly lowered position, so that you're more and more susceptible to an injury or something happening just from your everyday life. So I hope that has helped to explain tissue capacity versus stress placed on the tissues.